You Booked It, episode 36. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. All right, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Georgia Tapp. Are you ready for this, Georgia?
I am so ready for this.
Let's do it. All right. Georgia is an American actress currently living in London, UK. She recently made her UK debut as Carmen Diaz in Nick Winston's UK Tour of Fame. She has traveled all over the world as a lead vocalist for both Celebrity Cruise Lines and AIDA Cruise Lines. Other past credits include understudying Ellen in Miss Saigon, Olive Ostrowski in 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, Ellie in Some Enchanted Evening, Kathy Selden in Singing in the Rain, Natalie in All Shook Up, and Jill in Equus. Georgia, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, who you are, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry?
Cool. So I was originally born in Berkeley, California, and then I moved to Boston, where we went to school together at Boston Conservatory. So I studied musical theater there for 4 years, got a BFA, and then I quickly moved to New York City to pursue musical theater. I worked regionally, and then obviously you just said that I worked on AIDA Cruise Lines and Celebrity Cruise Lines, which I got to travel the whole world, and then it ultimately brought me here to London. And I moved here about a little over a year ago, and I'm pursuing theater here now. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to the next section. And look, Georgia, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite
Mhm.
quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
So, one of my favorite quotes is from one of my favorite ladies in the world, Judy Garland. And it is always be a first rate version of yourself and not a second rate version of someone else.
I love that. And how have you applied that quote to your career and your daily life?
So I think it's just great to be yourself because there's nobody else in the world that is going to be you. I think that we always try and fit sort of into a box in theater or in the entertainment industry. And instead of doing that, why not just try and be your best self? Because nobody else is going to do that except for you. So yeah, I just try and do that in my own personal life and in theater and entertainment.
I love that. And I can relate to that so much as well. Going to the Boston Conservatory and trying to be your stereotypical chorus boy, and my body structure is just not that. I'm much bigger, much more muscular, and it's just one of those things that as much as I tried, it was impossible. And eventually you go, look, this is me, and I gotta embrace what I've got.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think I even coming out of that school, I was told, I was the leading lady,
Yeah.
but I think even just telling myself that it narrowed what I could do and what I actually saw myself doing in just in the entertainment industry in general. I only kind of, it just like pinholed me into one place. And I was like, actually, I'm not just the leading lady. I'm kind of funny. I can do quirky things, and I'd actually like to do other things just than that.
Yeah,
So I think I kind of had to learn to teach myself, like, really just be who you are instead of trying to be what other people are ultimately telling you a lot of the time.
absolutely. And I love that you mentioned it was a Judy Garland quote. Just 2 days ago, have you watched that new movie, Judy, with Renee Zellweger?
Oh yeah, she's amazing in it.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
it's yeah. No, it's so great. It's such a heartbreaking story, but
It really is.
yeah.
But great movie.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to this next section. And Georgia, you are an entertainer. I am an entertainer. And I think you'd agree that this industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries either of us have ever experienced. And you know as well as I that in order to create and to have a successful career in this industry like you're having now takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And
Mhm.
while yeah, there is a outrageous amount of fun and excitement to be had being an entertainer, being on stage. There are also our fair share of obstacles and challenges and failures that we're going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. Tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
I wouldn't say it's one challenge. I would say that it's a constant challenge, and it's just the having to deal with rejection. You know, I've been so lucky enough to have jobs that, or have the jobs that I've had, but they are so few and far between. And it's really how you kind of have to just deal with the criticism and the constant telling, like saying no to yourself, and how it affects your mental health. And the thing is that I've just learned over the years, and I think it just comes with age and experience, kind of dealing with this day to day of what it actually takes to be an actor or in the entertainment industry, and just trying to be nicer to yourself and not take it so seriously or personally, and learning how to build that strength to endure it. But then the other thing is like to not become cynical about it, you know? So I would say that it's a constant struggle you do deal with, but I've learned to kind of have things roll off my shoulder a bit more. And I've just learned that, it comes with it, but the payoff when you do get those jobs, it's so worth it in the end.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And absolutely, that you by bringing that up, I'm glad that you brought that up because hopefully anyone who's aspiring to be a professional entertainer or you're new to the industry to hear that and to realize that that is just part of life and that of course you're going to have to develop your own way of coping and dealing and getting through these challenges, but knowing that they are a constant thing in pretty much every single professional entertainer's life is also makes you feel like you're part of it as well. You're not unique in thinking that you're being hard on yourself or being frustrated because everyone is experiencing that and that like you've done over your career, you've learned and matured into that and found your own solutions.
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, I have friends who are only now, I mean, I'm 32 years old. They're only now kind of coming into their careers, and they had years and years of rejection before that, And so it's just kind of understanding how you can deal with that. And then, your career might start just a bit later. Everybody's path is going to be different. But yeah, you're definitely not alone in feeling that way. And it's trying to understand how you can be more kind to yourself, because it is a part of life, rejection. But you just got to keep on pushing through it. If you have that dream and you want to continue to succeed.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to this next section now to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time where you realize, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
So I've always been a creative person since I was a little kid. My mom is an artist. She's always been a dreamer. I kind of grew up in that world where it was just born. I was just born like that. But I would say when I was 10 years old, I got to do my first musical, which was The Wiz, which is hilarious. I
Yes.
played I played the Tin Man.
So did I. So did
And
I in a
oh
production of
my God,
Wiz.
that's amazing. It was with like an entirely black cast. I was the only white person in the show. And it honestly blew my mind how these people became my family. This community of theater people just enveloped me into their world. And I realized by creating something with people that I didn't know before, you could have these bonds and these connections that you just wouldn't get from being in school or going to a dance class or going to a voice lesson. It was like through creating like musical theater that you got these great connections with people. And I think that's ultimately kept me wanting to be in the theater industry and like in the entertainment industry. It's like getting to create with other people on that personal level. So when I was 10, I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. And luckily, I had a wonderful, supportive mom who was like, yes, yes, you can do all of these things and I'll help you like get to school and do it. And, so yeah, I knew from when I was 10 years old.
I love that. That's a great story. And let's piggyback on that question quickly and talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if those happen to be part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
So I'd love to talk about when I booked Carmen in the Fame tour out here in London. It was my first show here in the UK, which was really exciting. And so basically, what happened that day? We had to go in for a dance call, and I think it was about 2 to 3 hours of dancing, and they had us do a jazz, just a jazz dance where we had, oh, I think there were like 30 people in this tiny, tiny room. So it was very, very crammed. And they were making us like kick and leap and like do all these pirouettes. And it was very intense. And I kind of just was like, I'm gonna go for it. Let's see how this goes. Whatever, because we didn't have that much room, honestly, to like learn the choreography. But I just kept going, and I got through. And then we had, of all things, a ballet cut, which made me sweat so much.
Yeah,
I
you're like, is
haven't had
this
to do.
is this chorus line? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm like, why are we having to do ballet right now? I have not had to do like an adagio for years. But so yeah, we had to do some ballet, which was a bit of a challenge, but I also just persevered and got through it. And then after that, they made another cut, and then we ended up singing. So I think out of that, like 30, I think they had two groups of 30 people, of 30 girls, and then I think they maybe kept 8 of us to sing. And then I went in, sang a Kelly Clarkson song, and just left. And it was very quick. The singing was, in and out, very quick. And then I think the next week they called me back. And this is like such a theater actor trying to like hustle situation where, so in London I've learned that when you get, it's a lot harder to get the audition here than it is in New York. Once you do get that audition, it's like you can't ask to change the time, you can't ask to change the day, because like that's the one chance that they want to see you. Because it's just a lot harder for some reason to get seen here than it is in New York. And so basically I knew I had to get to my job. I teach fitness classes, and I had the audition literally at the same time. And I was like, you know what? I'll just get there maybe 2 or 3 hours early, see if they'll see me early. Maybe somebody will like switch with me. We're just gonna hope, and
Yeah.
I'll get to work somehow. And then luckily, someone was really really sweet. This wonderful woman was like, "Oh my gosh, I can switch with you. I don't have to go anywhere." So she ended up switching slots with me, which was a godsend. I went in. I didn't have everything fully memorized because it was a very quick kind of turnover. So So I had all of the lines and everything in my hand, even though it was a final. And yeah, I just kind of went for it, sang my songs, and then because I didn't actually have all of the lines like fully memorized, I definitely made up some words. And my Carmen is a very like she's got a bite to her. She's got like an edge to her. Um, and at the end of the scene, I dropped the F bomb and just like walked away. But I honestly think in those moments of like kind of making it up, and it really showed like pieces of Carmen and that character to the my auditioners basically. And yeah, and that's how I got it. By
I love
dropping the
it.
F bomb.
Hey, see,
Yeah.
it's good for more than just some colorful conversation.
Yeah.
I love that story. Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, it's a weird time. We are amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Basically right now, because of COVID and the pandemic, I'm not currently working on anything. I was auditioning up until everything sort of shut down in London, and then I had to I had to do a few submissions of self tapes. But then basically they got back to me and said, well, we don't know when we can have you actually come back in for a final callback, but we'll be in touch in the distant future. So I'm kind of just trying to stay creative on my own, by singing at home, playing my guitar. And then I also teach fitness classes online. So getting into that online world. But yeah, I'm just interested to see what is going to come out of this pandemic, and how I really hope that theater, like people appreciate live theater in a totally different way than they did before. Just that communal feeling of all being together in one space and seeing this creative live performance in front of you. But I wonder if there's going to be some like weird experimental wacky creative digital things that are going to come out of this. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm excited about.
Absolutely. I was speaking with someone the other day, and he was working on a project that is using Twitch to do some live streaming kind of, it sounded like a bit of a choose your own adventure kind of production.
That's cool. I love
Yeah.
that.
I love that
That's
people
really
are
cool.
embracing this and seeing what's there, because we're in this new landscape where quite
Yeah.
literally almost anything is possible at this point, more than ever.
Oh, for sure. Did you ever see there was a movie on Netflix where it was kind of a choose your own adventure movie that they put out? I think this was maybe a year ago, where you were able to like go through the movie and then click which way the character would choose to go, and then however you would click on it, it would change the story.
And I
Have
didn't
have
see
you
that. I
I
feel
don't
like I
know.
read something about it, but I certainly haven't watched it or experienced it. I will check it out.
You've just reminded me of it, but I can't, honestly, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it right now. But it was kind of this choose your own adventure where it incorporates the people that are at home, watching online, and somehow creating that connection between them and the screen. But
Very
yeah.
cool. Well, I guess I know what I'm doing after this interview.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is time to move on to one of my favorite sections of the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round.
Mhm.
I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
I would say the lack of stability and then the constant rejection.
Fair. Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
From my mom to never ever stop dreaming.
Love it. Third question. What is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Um, I would say be more kind to yourself and also just find ways to be creative on your own, especially during this time in COVID. Keep, your passions going and keep your methods going of keeping yourself fit for when we all have to come back.
I love that, and thank you for bringing that up because I think so often, us as entertainers, when we're moving from show to show or gig to gig, whatever it might be, that tends to be where our focus is, and we also it's easy to get caught up in that that is how we get ourselves artistically or creatively fulfilled is by doing that professional work where we're actually receiving income for. But it's great, I think, in this time where we've had some time to reflect and go, look, we are actually in control of how creative we want to be, and to realize that we are in these inherently super creative people in this industry, and we have so much control on creating art by ourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think, yeah, we don't give ourselves enough credit to do our own work and make our own stuff. We think that we always have to find stuff outside of us, but it's really all within us to do it. And we got the time now, so you got to do it.
Absolutely. And the fourth question, what is the best resource? Whether it's a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now.
I would say that I'm a very old school kind of a person. So I don't know if this is any new information, but I love musicnotes.com. I think it's simple, but I find all of my audition songs, piano sheet music from that. And they have so many different songs out there now that you can find. And then I also use a piano on my phone constantly. So that those are my like two go-tos. And then I would also say a really great book. It has nothing to do with theater, just like life. It's called You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. And it's just helped me with my personal life and also just with my career. And yeah.
Brilliant. So with music notes, the good thing about that is you can transpose things as well, right? Very easily.
Yeah, you can find different keys for the sheet music. So yeah, if you need to transpose it down a half step or up like two steps, yeah, it's super, super easy.
Yeah, I think I use it a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, I use it constantly because I feel like I'm being brought in for so many different things a lot of the time. Like I do have a set rep book, but I think I always like to find something that is new and inspires me instead of just singing the same stuff over and over again. So it's a really good resource to, just and it's not very expensive to purchase it. And I find that the sheet music is pretty easy to follow. So it's never too complicated for a pianist to read, sight read. Because sometimes, if you bring in like a Sondheim piece, people are like, oh gosh, this is a bit too much for me to do in an audition. I
Yeah,
always
right.
find that music notes is like pretty basic and it does what you need and it helps the pianist be a better pianist for when you need to sing.
Absolutely. I think that is really good advice for anyone that is getting music to not to not bring some crazy complicated music.
Yeah, I've definitely been there and done that, and you don't need to add that stress of doing something like
No, it's already
that.
enough that you're collaborating with someone that you've just met. So
Yeah.
help yourself out.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. And the fifth question, if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
I would definitely say, and we've already talked about this, but to find ways to be creative on your own, because you do find that you're a lot of the time, having to have a side hustle and then just audition, and then you don't get that time to be creative and actually feel fulfilled. Because sometimes, auditioning doesn't really bring that joy. So, if anything, find that creative outlet that you can do at your house or with your friends or start writing a show or write some music or find those moments to be creative on your own, and you'd be surprised at like what opportunities can come out of just doing that. um, and then I would also say you'll get a lot of great advice from well-informed people in the industry, but then you're also going to get a lot of bad advice. And I would say you don't need to listen to everybody's advice that they give you just because they might be a bit more informed or they've worked in the industry a bit longer or they're older than you. Or I would just say that there were moments that I think I took seriously some advice and it didn't benefit me because it kind of took me away from who I am and it was trying to make me somebody else, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Um,
Perfect sense.
yeah.
And the last question. What is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in the industry that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I would say that and I was told this a million times when I was in college, and for some reason, it didn't always sink in for whatever reason. I think I just had stars in my eyes. But there is absolutely no set plan for a career in the entertainment industry. Everyone's path is going to be so vastly different, and you just kind of have to go with the flow, knowing that your career will go the way it should. You can't define yourself or put yourself, like we said earlier, in a box or set this path for yourself. Obviously, you can give yourself goals and things to work towards, but just know that you might have to bob and weave around a bit to get to that goal, and it's definitely not going to be the same as somebody next to you.
Absolutely. I think that's incredibly great advice because, I mean, for me, I never made it back to New York because I met an Australian and fell in love with her. So
Yeah.
I'm much happier with that path because it's the best part of my life now. And if I would have just been closed minded, then I would have never been open to that.
Yeah, I don't think I would have ever, if I had said no to, the cruise jobs that I ended up taking, because I think when I started doing cruises, they definitely had a bit of a different, um, people were like, oh, you're going on a cruise, instead of staying in New York and trying to be on Broadway and stuff. It didn't, I mean, now it has like a lot more weight to it and people really respect it. But I think, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, it wasn't as respected. But I'm so happy I went and chose that because I wanted to travel and it ultimately led me to London, but it opened my world up to so many other possibilities and so many people and so many experiences that I would never, regret giving. Yeah. So
Love it. Love it. And to wrap up this interview, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
So yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Georgia Tapp, and then you can also find me on Twitter at Georgia M Tapp. Yeah, I'm just trying to put out good energy into the world. I teach lots of fitness classes now that we are trying to stay at home and be online. But yeah, hopefully once theater kind of gets back up and running, you'll see me in some more things out there. But yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. Georgia, it has been fantastic to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was so wonderful.
Give it up for our 5-star reviewers, Chelsea D, Latin X Dancer, and Just Jonas's iPod. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.